Welcome to the Rabid Atheist. I'm your host, Ed Raby, the Rabid Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. This going live. I went an hour later because I had a lot of things to do this morning, and so I knew I would have to sleep a little bit later. So working thirds. So today's agenda. I want to talk about if you're going to really believe in the Bible as the truth and be a biblical Christian. I think there's 5 things you really have to believe that are kind of, to me, a little bit nonsensical and probably would be to most people nonsensical. I also want to talk. One of my theist commenters made the comment, and this kind of sparked my thinking about it, but they made the comment that, well, the gospel standards, give the biblical criteria of 2 or 3 witnesses, and they make, that criteria true. And I want to talk about that for a minute because I don't think that really is true. Yeah, the gang isn't here yet, Bruno. It's a holiday weekend too, but I'm not going to worry about that. I learned a long time ago that when you do live streams, people tend to join a little bit later anyway. But other people are going to watch this later, and I think we'll just we'll roll with whatever I got to say until some more people show up. But they'll get here, and a lot of them will watch it. They'll double speed me or start at the beginning or whatever, and they'll catch up, and then eventually they'll be with us. So I'm not worried about that. I'm kind of still experimenting with live streaming anyways, so trying to find the right time, the right format. So, hey, Michael. Yeah, so I want to talk about that, the 2 or 3 witnesses thing comment, because I actually did a series when I first started this channel about the life of Christ and how, and I was one of my criteria was, does this event in the life of Christ have actually 2 or 3 witnesses to it, and begin to point out that that's not true, even using the Gospels, as if I were to believe the Gospels were fact. A little political news, not a lot there. I think, it's a dead heat, imagine that. And then some comments. Hey, Stephen. I want to get back to the things you must believe if you're a Christian. If you're going to be a biblical-based Christian, these are some of the things I think you have to believe if you're going to take the Bible seriously as far as its truth value. I've studied the Bible for a long time, got degrees in this stuff. I was a pastor for a long time, and these are some of the things that I realized back then that I still think are true today that you have to believe in if you are going to be a biblically based Christian. And these were things that gave me fits, trying to explain them to others. Number one, I know this will ignite some controversy, but I think if you're a Christian and you are a flat earther, you are the most honest biblical Christian there is. Because the one thing that is very clear is the cosmology of the Bible is a flat earth with a dome, and the sun and moon are just little balls inside of it, giving off light and all that jazz. And it's on the pillars of the earth. That's what causes earthquakes, the fountains of the deep. The whole thing is flat earth cosmology. And if you're a flat earther and a biblically based Christian, you're at least being honest. I think that's one of the things that I constantly got into fights with when I was a Christian and a creationist. It was one of the inevitable things that I had to conclude that was true, but I also couldn't deny that science has kind of made that an impossible view. So that's number one. Second, one of the things I think you have to be as a biblically based Christian is you have to start off with the idea that God is a very much a divine command morality type person, and that might makes right. And the fact that God is the biggest dog is the reason that he gives for making the rules. And so your morality isn't based at that point. If you're a biblically based Christian, your morality isn't based on an assessment of whether something does benefit or good or evil to a person or a group of people. If God says so, um, then that's the way it is. But if you're going to be a biblically based Christian, one thing that's very clear is God makes it clear, I give the commands here, and if you disobey them, I will punish you for it. And that is very much something that you have to accept if you're going to be a truly biblically based Christian. Um, Along with that, there's a couple moral issues that I know I'm going to get pushed back from the theists on these, but I couldn't escape it if I was listening, if I was reading all the Bible on the subject. And number three for me is you have to believe in some sense that slavery is okay. Okay. In fact, I would say that both the Old and New Testaments kind of endorse it, okay, as being okay. There's never a statement of it's wrong to own another human being, but there is a lot of statements about how to treat slaves, how to uh, make slaves, the proper relationship between masters and slaves. And this is the master-slaves relationship is very much in the New Testament. I think one of the most famous one is 1 Timothy 6:1 and 2, which reads, all who are under the yoke of slavery should consider their masters worthy of full respect, so that God's name and our teaching may not be slandered. Um, in other words, make sure you're obedient to your masters so we didn't get the slander of Christians make slavery difficult. No, we don't want that. We don't want that reputation, is basically what whoever the writer of First Timothy is saying. And those who have believing masters should not show them disrespect just because they are fellow believers. Instead, they should serve them even better because their masters are dear to them as fellow believers and are devoted to the welfare of their slaves, that last part being negotiable. If you're going to be a biblically based Christian, you have to understand that your Bible endorses slavery. I've seen a lot of excusegetics on this one with apologists, but if you straight up just take what the Bible says about the subject and don't try to editorialize it or make it subject to the subjective morality of society, slavery is an okay thing in the Bible, and it's not something that's considered in any way evil. It just is. And along with that is another moral question that, like it or not, genocide is okay if God orders it. If God orders people to die, then it's okay. And that's something you just have to accept. Your morality as a believer just gets really interesting. And, I'm not going to dwell too much on the genocide comment other than the fact that I think that's there and that's what needs to be done. And then number five, I think the last one that I began to realize is there's a lot of Christian woo that you have to believe in. I had a comment recently about, how skeptics always assume a more naturalistic explanation, but my response to it is, but you add so many things, welcome native. Glad you caught me for the first time, but I'm getting used to the live streaming thing. So bear with me, but, woo in a Christian context, prophecy is kind of like astrology. There are stories in the Bible that have ghosts and witches and other things. I think I'm going to do I'm going to interrupt my normal biblical study series to do in October to do a kind of Halloween themed biblical studies where I talk about the various Halloweenish things inside the Bible. I'm going to talk about the witches, ghosts, and goblins that are in the Bible. So we'll have fun with that. But there's a lot of woo. Okay, there's a lot of being guided by the Spirit. I mean, even very non-Pentecostal Christians kind of believe in this guidance by God and God's leading them, and there's this path, this spiritual path, and this spirituality. There's a lot of woo there. I did my spiritual discipline series, and a lot of that's based on the Bible too, a plain reading of the Bible, of learning how to meditate and pray and fasting leading to some spiritual thing and all that stuff. And I think if taking it all together throughout the Bible, if you're going to be a biblically based Christian, there's a lot of woo-woo stuff that you're going to have to accept as reality. So that's kind of my 5 things that I think you have to believe if you're going to be a truly biblical Christian. Once again, it's the the flat earth, the might makes right morality, slavery, genocide are both okay, and a lot of Christian woo. I think those are things you have to believe if you're going to be a biblical Christian. Um, uh, yeah, Michael, I'm glad you are in Germany. Here in the United States, there's a lot of biblical literalists. And I just point out to them that are not as literal as they think they are. Otherwise, they would believe a lot of these things, but they don't. I don't know. I received a comment. The second thing I want to deal with in this live stream is I received a comment about the 2 or 3 witnesses rule that the Bible has. You know, in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word is to be established. And I was in a debate about the authenticity of the Gospels and the authorship of the Gospels. And he kind of brought this up as well. You know, we have 4 witnesses of the life of Jesus, and that meets the biblical criteria. Um, yeah, Native, I feel for you then. I was down in Texas. I'm going to tell you something about the United States and the Bible Belt. It's a real thing. I felt like I stepped back in time to the 80s in Michigan because that's how it felt down there. It's like when it comes to religion, the Bible Belt's about 40 years behind everybody else. So it really is something that gets very locked, and how much religion was assumed to be true was really big. But getting back to the 2 or 3 witnesses thing, I decided not to comment because I wanted to leave it for this live stream. And I hope some of the people that believe this stuff will pick this up. I don't think it helps you, the 2 or 3 witness criteria of the Bible, because number one, because we were kind of debating Acts 2. And if you're going to do the 2 or 3 witnesses with the book of Acts, then you have a real problem, because the book of Acts is the only place where a lot of those stories appear. In fact, all of the stories of the book of Acts only have one witness, and that's the book of Acts. And so if you take the 2 or 3 witnesses criteria of the Old Testament, you'd have to throw out the book of Acts because it's only one witness. Okay. And on the biblical basis, it would be hearsay. Okay. I mean, I think it's already hearsay based on our own criteria of being rational and legal. But based on the biblical criteria of 2 or 3 witnesses, there's only one witness for all of those events in the book of Acts, and that's the book of Acts itself. Everything else outside of it doesn't exist. So we'd have to throw that away. And I'm thinking of the other things, like when I did my series on the life of Christ, and I kind of aborted it. I think I'm going to pick it back up again and do it again as a replacement, probably for Heroes of Faith when I get that point. But do I ever talk about Islam? I'm not an expert enough in Islam to make a comment, other than when I heard the origin story of Islam, how Muhammad went into a cave, was illiterate, and suddenly came out with a Quran. I'm like, that's like the most BS origin story for a religion I've ever heard. It's right up there with Joseph Smith and his golden plates. Yeah, I mean, if you're a sucker and you want to believe in that stuff, I was a snake oil salesman as a pastor myself without realizing it for 18 years, and did realize it for the last 2 years. But there is some elements of religion that are all the same. And usually the origin story is this person or that person went off on their own where nobody could see them and suddenly had this revelation from God, and come back to everybody. I had a revelation from God, and found enough naive people to believe him. It's why I think it's very real a possibility that Jesus Christ did exist. And there's a real option for me that he was just a faith preacher that figured out how to use Judaism to build a following, and they loved him and thought the world of him or whatever. So I think that's a real possibility. But Islam kind of, to me, lost me the moment I heard the origin story of Islam. Okay. It's like, really, there are people that used to sell snake oil in the Old West that had better pitches than that. So I just kind of Islam lost me very, very early. And then I read the Quran a long time ago, and it's worse than the Bible in a lot of respects as far as what it asks you to believe and think about. So very disjointed. I didn't get it at all. So No, I don't really talk about Islam. It's not my expertise. I can talk about fundamentalist Christianity all day long because I was a fundamentalist Christian for a lot of years, like 30 years, and a pastor for a long time. So I can talk about that. I tend to stay within what I know and work on the things that I don't know. But yeah. But back to the two or three witnesses thing. You'd have to kill the Gospel of John in large part because a lot of the stories in the Gospel of John only have one witness, John, supposedly, which that's the other problem with the Gospels is their authorship. Nobody really knows. And, because they don't self-identify, you can't time lock them. Yeah, no problem. I don't have a problem answering any question. It's usually most of the time people don't get the answer they want. Okay. And I try to be as honest as possible about what I know. I do know the Bible really well, the Christian Bible really well, because I preached from it for 20 years. So um, I think you have to get rid of most of the Gospel of John. So that's only one witness. There's not two or three there. Um, Yeah, Michael, but it's being honest. Okay, if it's not like I would feel very uncomfortable talking about evolution because it's not my expertise. I'll leave that to the Aaron Ra's of the world that actually have degrees and stuff like that. Um, I absolutely believe in staying where you're at and what you know. I'm starting to learn about moral philosophy enough where I can talk about it, but I still have a lot of gray fuzzy areas. That's why I'm doing the series the way I'm doing it. I'm asking more questions than answering. So there's that. I know what else would we have to get rid of from the Gospels that if we did the two or three witnesses criteria from the Bible? Well, anything mentioned by the synoptics, it's basically copying from Mark. Thank you, Jovo. Appreciate that. Because you have the Gospel of Mark is the first one written, and then the other two straight up copy him for most of it. But that's just one witness, the Mark witness, and the other people are just copying the same witness. So that's not. I mean, if you have an eyewitness to an event and two cops, like two police officers, copy what they say about what happened, that's not suddenly making that three witnesses. That's still just one witness. So everything that Luke and Matthew copy from Mark is still only one witness, and it doesn't line up. Most of it doesn't line up with John either. So you still don't get that. So you're left with very, very few stories that have multiple gospel witnesses. I think the only one that has all four witnesses is actually the feeding of the 5,000. I think it's the only story that has all four gospel writers write about it. They all kind of write about the resurrection, except for Mark. Mark doesn't really write about the resurrection. And then the other three that do give details about the resurrection contradict each other, and they're all over the place. And so, yeah, I mean, it's the real problem with the two or three witnesses categorization added to the Gospels and Acts is you get rid of a lot of the Gospels and Acts that don't have two or three witnesses. It's kind of a Christian myth that you have these two or three witnesses. You don't. Okay. You have four Gospels that witness different events, and some of the events are solo. A good example is right away, like Matthew is the only one that talks about the slaughter of the innocents. He's the only witness then of the slaughter of the innocents in the Gospels. The other Gospel writers don't talk about it. He's also that way when it comes to the bribing of the guards. Tell them that you fell asleep, kind of thing. He's the only one that mentions that story. There's just a lot of stories that are solo accounts in the Gospels that don't have a two or three witnesses, even by the gospel and biblical standard. And it's one of the great weaknesses I ran into with the Bible, because if you're trying to justify the Bible as a Christian using the Bible, and you want to say that you have two or three witnesses in the Gospels, you have to look at all the individual stories and ask, is that true? And what you find out is 90% of the time, no, it's not. Okay, that was kind of the point of my series, was that this isn't two or three witnesses. And it brings up another question for every story. Who is the one that would have brought that story to the gospel writers? Where did the gospel writer get that from? And that adds another element to the witness issue. Did the event actually have two or three witnesses itself? Like, for instance, when the angel announces to the Virgin Mary that she's about to have a baby, who witnessed that event? Just Mary. She does. That event only has one witness, and we're trusting that witness without any corroboration for her either. So, there's a lot of stuff that's very private in the Gospels, and you'd have to ask, how did the Gospel writer find out that information? And it would be like, well, the one person that was there must have told the story. Well, how do we know that they're accurately portraying the story? We don't. And so that's why when you analyze the Gospels in a legal sense, like whether it's hearsay, it becomes a real problem. Thank you, I Killed Earl. Appreciate you. Um, some of your stuff you've written me privately has really sparked my thinking. So thank you very much. And thank you for the memberships. I appreciate that. I kind of, with live streams, you kind of live on memberships. This is not going to get the same views as some of my other videos, and it's all about membership. Thank you very much. Kind of why I've headed that direction. It's much more stable for me. So I don't know. I just, when I got the comment, I almost laughed out loud because I'd already dealt with that way in the early days of this channel, and now that I've gotten, that's back when, holy cow, I don't even think I had 500 subs at that point. And I was just talking about this whole idea of two or three witnesses doesn't even work from a biblical criteria, and whether or not even the Bible would accept the Gospels, the Old Testament biblical standard of witnesses, would that even accept the Gospels? And the answer, I think, is for 90% of it, no. Okay, it wouldn't stand up even in an Old Testament court of law. And I found that very interesting, and nobody really talks about that in Christendom. They don't really bring up the two or three witnesses other than to give the old trope answer, we have four Gospels. And it's like, but inside your Gospels, when you look inside of them, some of these stories are only witnessed by one Gospel, particularly John. John is notorious for that. A lot of his stories are completely unique and doesn't have anything else. So the two or three witness thing, yeah, you got to work on that. I don't think that's going to work. See, what else is on the agenda today? Oh yeah, the political news. The polls have tightened, and I expected this. This is what I expected. I'm still, I don't know. I'm still predicting that Harris will win somehow, but I also think she's going to win the Electoral College, but may not win the popular vote, and that'll be an interesting thing for Democrats to talk about. That's kind of why I want it. I want to see what happens when that happens. It's never happened before, so it'll be interesting if that's how they get in. I look at politics as kind of entertainment, sorry. But it's very interesting to me because of being in a battleground state, how things have tightened up. I don't usually like talking politics too long because I don't think it gets really interesting in political presidential races. When I was running for local office, one of the guys, yeah, you're welcome, Iron. I mean, I try to answer a lot of these questions. I really do. I just, I have to think about them for a while. It's why I don't do debates. I just got off a live stream at Captive Desk like a half hour ago, and they were talking about Jim Bob and why they don't debate him. And I don't debate because I just don't. I have to think a while before I give an answer to any question. And it's much easier for me to just think about it for a little bit and then give my answer. And so that's the way I do things. And I don't do things off the cuff very well. That's why live streaming is a little bit nerve-wracking for me at times. I do have my social anxiety issues as an autistic person, but I think I'm doing okay. It's just, I try to answer questions in a timely manner as long as you give me a little bit of time to think about it. Now, a lot of answers I've already thought about, so I give my answer as it stands. Like the Morality Without God series right now, I'm learning as much as probably the rest of you listening to me. I am totally still in the dark. Some of the comments in that series have been very interesting in the fact that somebody mentioned, well, the semantics seems to be a problem. Exactly. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Defining terms, what do we mean by X? It takes, yeah, I'm when I do that series, I sit down and I'm in the dark. Okay, I'm very much in the dark as much as anybody else, and you got to keep your political views to yourself. That's actually probably wise. It's why I don't talk about it very much. I think what are the problems, and this is me being critical of my own community. Okay, but 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 as far as the atheist community and politics, one of my criticisms is we'll sit there and say it's just about the belief or non-belief in God. Okay. Um, and then turn right around and expect a certain political viewpoint out of atheists. If it's just about the non-belief in God, um, why do I say that Allah isn't God? Because he doesn't have any proof for his existence any more than any other God. I might be short a moderator actually today. I don't see one. Hold on. Yeah, I've already been warned about Mr. Wesley, so he will not be allowed to comment. Okay, but I'm just, this. Yeah. Hold on, Earl. Okay, I just made you a standard and moderator, Earl. So you have a wrench. Okay, so thanks. I do take volunteers for moderators too, but all my tribunes automatically get it because they pay money to have that power. So, but yeah, I was recently on Tim Mills about the comments, and I was reminded of the kind of community I'm trying to build here, following another rabbit trail here. And I want this to be a place where people can talk about their deconversion and not get harassed. Okay. Yes, with great power comes the blue wrench. Yes. What this does for me, I'm more interested in creating a community where deconverting people and atheists can talk about their issues without um, being harassed or proselytized or stuff like that. And so I know it seems harsh, like some of the people that we block from commenting and things like that. It seems harsh, but I'm not interested. If you're gonna be a theist and come here, be respectful. And I look at my comment section, and there are times, I'm talking about some of the comments I've got this week. If you're going to be a commenter, okay, and be a theist, please be respectful. Okay, thank you, Iron. I appreciate that. Here. I'm going to add you as well because I could use a couple of you today. I think my normal moderators are on their Labor Day holiday, so yeah, be restraintful. But if you feel like somebody's being preachy, you're more than welcome to put them in timeout and say, "Hey, don't preach." Okay. I've had people come here and say, Jesus is your savior. Why do you not deny God and do all that kind of crap? And yeah, you can say stop to that. I don't want that kind of community here. What I want is respect. If you're a theist, be respectful and treat us like human beings. And I don't think you'll ever have a problem with any of my moderators. Yes. Yeah. I don't like it anymore because I used to be a preacher. Okay. This is one of the, okay, let me talk about something personal here. I really try to run this channel very differently than I ran my church. Okay. Um, it, it's, I don't like the authoritative, heavy-handed bullshit that I used to have to do as a pastor. And I don't like preachiness where I'm like pontificating that I have the absolute truth and this is the way it is and all of that jazz. I don't like doing that anymore. It's very emotionally uncomfortable for me when I was a preacher, and now it's even more so. And so I don't like hearing it, okay, either. I, have your different viewpoints politically. I don't care about that most of the time. Social viewpoints can vary in atheism, all that stuff. I Yeah, and bonsai, that's kind of what I'm looking for. If you're a theist, more power to you. I just have a hard time when people feel like, as a theist, they got to push and promote their views on others. You know, I don't, I don't do that. You won't see me on some theist channel in the chat being annoying. I just don't do that. Um, yeah, just catch up, guys. You'll be fine. Um, So, you're welcome. I don't have a problem with people coming here and chatting and being welcome. It's when, I've been deconverted now for 9 years. Okay. I have been a non believer in Christianity. And for about 8 years, I haven't believed in God. And must let go of bad words. Well, you need to tell that to some of the pre-suppers out there. Holy cow. uh, Natives out there. He knows one of the preceptors we were talking about earlier. Um, you know, so I don't get the atmosphere anymore of this discussion. I can tell that Christianity is dying because of how emotional the arguments have become these days against it, for it. The fact that they're running to the moral argument, the fact that they're presupposing things, the fact that they're doing all kinds of things, but that leads them to also get right into your face, okay, about stuff. And they'll say, you do this. It's like, would you calm down and just give me your argument? Okay. Um, so it's, I don't know. The atmosphere just is not my thing anymore. I don't have the capacity for that. I've always wanted to have a channel where people deconverting can come and talk about things without feeling like they're harassed. Okay. So if you feel harassed at any time, you're watching this stream later or right now, if you ever feel like you're being harassed by a theist, just let me know. My email is in the front of my channel, or let me know in chat. And I had one theist accuse me of removing a comment, but I didn't. And and then he accused me of intellectual dishonesty. So it's like, yeah, what a great reference, Earl. Yeah, I do that a lot. One of the great myths about autistic people is we don't have emotions. We actually have pretty deep emotions. We just have a lot of control mechanisms that keep them in check, um, on purpose and by our neurology. So it's like, yeah, I'm considered one of the more patient atheists on YouTube, but I have my limits too. So just be advised in the comments. I don't know. It's been an interesting week for me personally. I do talk about my personal life a little bit in this because I think it's a deconversion issue. I want to let people know that I still go through stuff. Uh, I have talks with my family. I have a regular breakfast meeting with my my family on Fridays, where I meet with my daughter and my mother and my grandkids and stuff like that. It's a regular thing to kind of keep up with each other. Spend a couple hours in breakfast, but they're all theists. And and so there are moments in those conversations, like everybody else, I run into the same problems that everybody else does. And one of them has been this mention of God, the mention of the church, um, happens to me all the time, and I still deal with it. And I don't feel my family's ever gotten preachy about it. I very sure they know that I don't believe anymore. I'm sure my oldest son, who's very aware of this channel and was one of the first subscribers to it, has told them, what I do. So, but they never mention it, and I think that's good. You know, just be a good human being, and I deal with that. I'm just trying to be a good human being to everybody, and I really have a problem with people that aren't. Okay, I do. I've had comments this week that have really challenged me in the sense of, you do realize that you're making a lot of statements that you can't prove. And I could write that comment over and over and over again, and I just stopped doing it. Okay. Yeah, Mike, I internally, I am far more angry more often than I am outwardly, but that's that, Earl and I can tell you stories of how our emotions are inside, but you will never know. Okay. I get annoyed just like everybody else. I get angry just like everybody else. But the autistic masking is very, very real for most of us. We don't let it show. And people like, I got accused just like a week ago of, do you have any emotions at all? Like, I was working with somebody and they just asked me, do you have any emotions at all? And I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah, of course I do. And he's like, well, you never show anything. And I'm like, well, that's because I'm autistic. And he's like, oh, and he knew something about it because he had a family member that was autistic. So he's like, oh, so it's the masking thing. And I said, yeah, pretty much. I've been accused of the fact that I could probably be a really good poker player. I don't know about that, but we'll see. I know odds pretty well. So, but yeah, if you're commenting on here, be respectful and you won't have a problem. That's true of the comments on videos and true here. And I'm thanks to the two people that volunteered to be mods right now. I appreciate that. I still feel like I'm a little short on moderators because, I live stream at different times and premiere at different times, and I just don't have that. So there's that. Let's see, what other interesting comments? I'm not sure that there were too many interesting comments. I do want to do some talk about, there were some questions after the last live stream when I opened the floor. Somebody asked me who my favorite author is. That depends on the day, and what the subject is. Yeah, me too. Earl, we should start a contest, maybe a tournament for autistic masking to see who the best masker is. The problem is, I think we'd have to all get a trophy. The one place where I think a participation trophy would be more applicable. But yeah, it's my favorite author depends on my day. Somebody asked me, oh, I didn't get a chance to ask you what your favorite music was. And I'm like, that also depends. I am fairly certain my Spotify account goes completely crazy with my musical taste because they're all over the place. It usually has a lot to do, if I think it sounds good and it has good harmonies and there's a lot of good intricate weaving in it, that's when I love music. And so it doesn't really matter what the genre is. Okay, Stephen, we'll see you later. Yeah, but that's kind of, a lot of those questions, because I had therapy this week on Wednesday, and we did a lot of talking about, for me, the struggle of dealing with some of the stuff that happens on this channel. The live streams have introduced something new to me, and I'm glad Earl's here. She has a little bit more experience in this live streaming stuff than I do. It's added this understanding of what I've trained myself as an autistic person to deal with and my limits. Okay. You used to be more polite. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm just inherently polite and I'm weird about it. Okay, I talked about this is actually a good segue into my therapist because I was talking about this because I was asking the question. I'm like, okay, am I weird? Because I joke and insult people I like. I am very polite to people I don't like. Okay. I Earl, no, I don't know that I've been that way. I've never done group stuff with autism. I'm such a new diagnosis. Um, it, I, I don't know. Um, I know a lot of people who I suspect are slight imbalance in that. Yeah, I, I, I insult the people I like, and I'm polite to the people that I don't like. Um, when I was working on days at the world's largest brick and mortar, I was very polite to customers because I don't like them. It's just a way of not getting in trouble with them. I think the reason is politeness makes things go quicker and smoother. You don't have this banter back and forth, and you just kind of end conversations. It's just trying to get through. So it's like to me, I was talking about this of whether this is backwards, and says no, it's pretty normal, you know, um, for some people that's the way it is, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's not necessarily an autistic thing, but getting used to this, we only came to this conclusion that I was autistic and hypersensitive about a year and a half ago in therapy, and it took her 2 years to kind of, after dealing with me that whole time, she's like, have you ever considered this? you know, uh, really? I guess I would have to experience that, Earl, of going into a group of people that are also all autistic. Um, I would have to experience it because I wonder what I would be like around my own kind, like in person. Like here online, it's very easy to talk about, isn't it? Because there's like this barrier in between us, and I can always hit the stop button. But if you're in a live situation, I would have to ask myself how uncomfortable I would be with that, especially if I was surrounded by other people who also mask. Um, you'd be in a room full of basically Spocks at that point, and all of us a bunch of Vulcans, and it's like, how would you deal with that? Um, it's probably why in Star Trek that was always my favorite character growing up, and yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It's funny how companies have this, Michael, here in the United States, how companies have a lot of these rules about certain language and stuff you shouldn't talk about at work. And the problem is with friends at work, all those rules seem to go out the window. Okay. And that's how you know somebody's your friend, is all the rules seem to go out the window. Okay. I, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like they have all these rules. You have a friend at work when you're willing to break the cultural rules with them. Okay. And I don't know if that's just a cultural thing where I live, but that's kind of the way it is. Hey, it's Captive. Hey, Captive. I had a great time watching you guys, listening to you guys today on your live stream. It was awesome. Um, yeah, Jim Bob is always a fascinating topic to me. I really think that the only reason he's popular is because people like to watch what he does. It's kind of like Howard Stern for pre-suppers. Um, I just want to see what he says next. Okay, what idiocy he says next. Really seems to be that way. I don't think he's really interested in a genuine dialogue. That's just why I don't deal with him anymore. But it was a good stream to watch. It was fun. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I'm very interested to see how I'd react in a different context. I'm very antisocial right now, so, and a large part of it is I live in a small town, and even though it's not the Bible Belt, there's a lot of religiosity here. Yeah, we keep getting sucked back in. It's the Godfather 3 problem. Yeah. Um, I don't know. Oh man. But yeah, I don't know. There's certain apologists that I just find too oily to deal with. they're all oily, but there are some that are just over the top, and he's one of them. I feel like there's so much fraud there. I don't know why I feel that way, but there it is. I don't know. Other things that happened this week. Therapy was good. Talked about my normalities, and I'm getting better. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, captive. Here's the thing. You're forgive the pun, but you're doing the Lord's work by dealing with some of these people. Yeah, like sardines. Yeah, yeah. I just, man. I mean, I know my brief experience with the man was very distasteful. I did notice that when I was on another live stream with somebody else, that he was playing clips of Jim Bob, and I'm thinking he's reacting to what I did to him. It's like, yeah, stinky too. Yeah, because he starts off with, well, you don't have the guts to come on here and live stream me, and it's like, he has to have that personal insult thing going, and it bothers me. Like, I know that's reacting to me and a bunch of other people who are treated in that way. That we already said we wouldn't debate him anymore. Because he can't seem to understand that he's not treating people well, and that's why people don't want to debate him. Instead, it's like they don't have the guts, and they're just not that. So, yeah, I seem comfortable. Once again, the autistic masking thing is kicking in. I can joke and be sarcastic and still mask pretty well. It's if you want to delve into my true feelings about things, you're going to have to get to know me really well. Okay, like, do I experience that? One of the things that happens to me that I talk with my therapist a lot is anxiety, because you'll never see me get anxious, but internally I'm anxious as hell. Like right now, my anxiety level inside is actually very, very high. And also, yeah, you bring up the pastor thing. This is one of the things I talked about with her in therapy is, why does my anxiety level shoot up at a certain point? Why does it there'll be a certain point for no apparent reason that my anxiety is like that curve that just suddenly shoots straight up, and that's the way it is for me. Well, we talked about that. Well, everything I did in church was about an hour long, hour and a half long, for like Sunday school and service and things like that. So it became it's a trained behavior now. My anxiety, I can deal with it for so long, and then it hits a certain level and I have to bail out. That's why a lot of my live streams so far have ended rather abruptly. I do apologize for that, but that's kind of the way it is. The hypersensitivity plays into that. That's why I have to be kind of a vampire. Yeah, me too. I did the same thing when I was a preacher. I'd get anxious real at the beginning and get up, and I do the same thing with live streams now. And I also, the anxiety kicks in every time I finish a video and I post it. And then my anxiety is there at a low level until it actually premieres or goes live, and then it's over. But that's kind of my anxiety level at that point. It's just kind of it's a thing I deal with. Hypersensitivity kicks in when it's a real bright day outside. I'm very anxious, very like my eyes are moving all over the place. What's going on, what's going to happen. In the ancient world, I would have made a great scout when it's a bright sunny day, because I'd be so aware of everything around me and it would be making me nervous. I don't know. And then the depression kicks in with the heat, and that's not quite over, and it robs me of my energy. So yes. Yeah, isn't that weird as a content creator of any type? You make stuff and you post it and you're never comfortable with it. Anybody else? I think everybody. Mm, yeah. Maybe, Earl, you bring up a good point there. Is that why I feel like I procrastinate so much? Like I do everything last minute. Like I'm rushing around to get the video done at the end. And I know I should probably do more research ahead of time, but if I do, I get even more anxious about it. So it's like, I don't want that. Um, and when I was a Christian, bringing this back to the religious context, I used to pray about this a lot and it never did anything for me. Now with therapy, I actually feel like I'm more comfortable than I used to be. Um, and that it's really helped. I can't advocate if you're a person deconverting and you're really struggling, therapy is a real good thing. Yeah, I overthink things. I'm bad for that. I remember when I was writing a lot and blogging, and actually writing is one of the few things that I'm the most comfortable with and posting. But even then, it was like, I'm going over this for the 100 millionth time, and then finally, I had to learn to turn my internal editor off. And doing videos is a little differently because they can see you, and doing a live stream like this, there is no editing. Okay, I can post edit this and get rid of stuff out of it, but I can't do anything live while I'm doing it. Um, yeah, yeah, it's a running gag to do a great video and then not get a lot of views. You know, it's why I appreciate members and people who gift memberships and all that stuff more and more every day, because trying to appease the YouTube algorithm seems to be so flipping difficult these days sometimes. Um, I mean, I want to give a shout out. I think Godless Granny did her live stream. She just hit 10K. And I'm like, this is a woman that should have hit 10K like a year ago. Um, it's like, it's, it's getting the support you need to do the work you need to do without worrying about the ad revenue. That's really the challenge of YouTubing. It really is. It's why I've started to push membership so much. And I try to do understand the algorithm gods, but I'm not really sure that I do. I think it's more, yeah, she makes great content. And I'm surprised it took her this long to get this far, because I was well aware of her like 2 years ago. And it's taken her this long to get to 10K. And it's like, I don't understand that. She does really good content. So it's all of our constant struggles with algorithmo, I guess. I'm not sure. I'm beginning to think that the algorithm gods are plural. I'm beginning to think it's a pantheon, and it's all depends on who's in charge that day. So that's my struggle with it. So I may do my, like everybody has their own mythology to illustrate points, like Lisa the Rainbow Giraffe, Leaf be upon her more hen. I love the skeptic on that. And I'm thinking of making my pantheon be more of a, what are the algorithm gods? The only ones I can find that actually exist. I think that would be interesting. I'll have to think about that. Yeah, I'm going to, some of the channel announcements, because of some of the comments by theists, they've caused me to rethink my Life of Christ series coming back into vogue. I want to teach the life of Christ as an atheist one time for sure. I also, in October, I'm going to do a special Bible study for the Bible study that usually comes on Wednesday. I'm going to make it Halloween themed. I want to talk about the ghosts and goblins in the Bible. There's some witches in the Bible. There's a ghost in the Bible. There's several other Bible stories that are kind of creepy like that. Let's find the creepy stories in the Bible and do that one. And that's that one. I also think Lilith. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that might be one of the interesting things. There's a lot of stuff there. I also, the Morality Without God series, I'm trying to think of something else to intersperse with that, because I'm having to do more study on that one to make it good. And there must be something else that I can do in there that doesn't take that time. I would agree with all of you. We do need more women making content in the atheist sphere. let's be honest, if you look at atheists and their gender identification, it tends to be very heavily male. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because we don't have as many women content creators and they need to get out there a little bit more, although there's still, yeah. Yeah, the dead man being resurrected is what I was thinking about. Yeah, you know, the zombie apocalypse caused by Jesus. That's a creepy one. That's a nice Halloween thing one. Um, the witch at Endor and the ghost of Samuel the prophet. So we got stuff like that to talk about. There's other stories in the Bible that I would consider kind of creepy and very Halloween, zombie, vampire. The debate of whether Jesus is a zombie or a vampire is a good one. That's come up before, but just having a lot of fun for Halloween. Halloween is like my favorite holiday, so I'm getting ready to have a lot of fun. At work, I just set the modulars for all the Halloween stuff. That will be debuted after Labor Day. So he's a lich. That's also a valid theory. I want to engage that theory because I think it illustrates a lot of points to theists. Okay, because they think there's just something special to this mythology of theirs, this Christian mythology, and it's a great way to illustrate how it's no better or worse than anybody else's. It's just, you can make it into a fantasy story. I think that's great. Yeah, rampant bullying scare a lot of people. Here's the thing, Earl. I think if you're going to be a female content creator, you're going to have to develop a very thick skin and a spine more than most, or have that already, because you're right. They come after you guys very, very hard. Um, and I do feel for you. So for every woman content creator I go out there, I try to find them and I try to follow them and put them up on my banner here on my channel, because there's a lot of them out there. There's a lot of women that are talking about their deconversion experience, but they don't get the airplay that I think a lot of other content creators get. But it's very important to note, because traditionally women, when I was a pastor, I relied more on the women to do a lot of the work in the church than the men. So I recognize the contributions of women at all levels was often far more significant, but they just never got the credit. And it's like, yeah, it's kind of for those of you out there who are ladies doing content, I encourage you to stick with it because we need so much more of it. Love you all. I think you're awesome. But like Godless Granny hitting 10K, I was great moment for her, but I felt it should have happened 6 months to a year ago. But then I realized she gets a lot of shit. Okay. She gets a lot of crap from a lot of people too. The whole granny vibe coupled with godless seems to be like people just have a real problem with that. I don't know what it is. And, everybody kind of has that issue. So, I take the heat all the time for being an atheist, but I can't imagine, some of the other stuff that goes along with it because of who you are. That stuff still exists. I'm starting to experience ageism, where people discount my opinion simply because I'm older, and I'm like, so what? Okay, when you get this old, you'll be just as bitter. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. I like the new direction. I'm only producing 3 videos a week instead of 5, but it also means that I get to do a little bit more work. And of course, that anxiety level we talked about earlier kicks in a little bit more, but I think it's worth it. I am going to continue to plug away at my mission. It's been interesting because I broke 5K and now we're almost to 5.1 a week later. So you figure it out. I don't know what's going on. For a couple of weeks there, I couldn't get a subscriber to save my life, and now it's picked up again. I think Prophet Azad's mention of me might have had a lot to do with that. So I thank him once again. There's just a lot of things that are going on in my life personally, and so I'm trying to navigate a lot of stuff. So it's not an excuse so much as it's facing the reality of being a content creator and trying to make it a more regular thing for me. And cutting back on the videos allows me to focus more on each video. So that's been a real boon for me this week. I feel a lot less anxious overall, so that's been helpful. Yeah, but I think that's it for channel news. Unless anybody has a question they want to ask me, because I will field questions here at the end for a little bit. But I think that's going to be it for me. Very interesting week. I've enjoyed it, but at the same time, it has my concerns, and I just a great time. You guys have been great, but you know what? I think I am going to cut it off. My anxiety level just jumped up for some strange reason, and I think it's just one of those things that I've got to figure out why it happens, and I still haven't figured that out yet. So, but thanks for everybody for stopping by. I appreciate all of you. As always, please make sure you live your best life. You know, you only get one go around, and there is no afterlife that's proven. So make sure you're taking all your time, your money, your energy, everything you do into living your best life for yourself, for the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. You'll be happier if you do, and don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith. That's a dead end. I speak from experience. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and I will catch you next time.